In this tutorial I'm going to demonstrate how to create a button controlled carousel, which I've used for the images and written content on my gallery page. So just to demonstrate, as I click through, you can see that the images slide to the left and the indicated dots down the bottom change colour, and that's just to tell the user where they are up to in the carousel. And when I get to the end, you can see that the button here disappears because I've reached the end of the carousel. Okay, so let's get started. So firstly, what you need is your gallery page, and I have applied a background pattern to mine, and to do that I just select the gallery frame, and where we have a fill color by default, I've just changed it from solid to image and applied a pattern to it. And then if I just show you what that looks like, when I scroll through you can see that the pattern doesn't move and the rest of the content does, which creates quite a nice depth to the page. Okay, so I've also laid out where I want the carousel to go, and I've just created a rectangle box to do that, and I've made it 1280 and my height is 730, and the height was just me kind of presenting the page and making sure that as I scrolled past the header or the title and the written content, that it would fit within my screen resolution, as well as the indicator dots and the footer. So mine was 730. I've applied a linear fill color to mine, which goes from white to soft pink, and I've also rounded the corners, so you can see I've done that here in the corner radius, and I've changed them to 10. So next I've got two buttons, so I've created those for you in Illustrator, so all you need to do is copy and paste. When you paste them in, don't forget to change the name, so this is going to be button left, and also change the color, so the arrow and the background color can be changed. So the background color, I made mine the pink, and then I've aligned them to the center of this box by using my align tools at the top. And I've placed mine to the edge of that frame, the center line here. And lastly, I've got these indicator dots down the bottom, and I'm using 8 because I've got 8 images in my carousel. So to create these, I just create a circle, and I made mine 12 for the width and the height, changed the color to white, and I made 8 copies. So don't worry about the spacing because we can use auto layout to fix that. So I'm going to make the first one my pink to show that's the active one, or that's the one that's for the first image. I select all of those dots and right click and go to add auto layout. Now I can change the overall spacing to 15 and rename that indicator dots and ensure it's centered in my gallery frame. Okay, so just go up a little bit. Perfect. Alright, so the last thing you're going to need is the content. So I'm actually creating that off to the side. So all I did was I copied the rectangle that I've got here, and then I started laying up the content within that. I found it easier to create a grid for the carousel especially, and the reason for that was the grid that I have for each of the pages, you can see that the content would go hard up to this edge if I was to use this grid. So I wanted to create a grid which allowed spacing for the buttons at the side and a little bit of kind of padding or space from the edge. So to do that, what I needed to do was turn this into a frame. So right click and frame selection, and then I just rename that Carousel 1, and I'm going to go and add a new grid, and in the grid settings I changed it to columns and it's 10. I knew my gutter was 20 because I wanted it the same as my website one. It's going to be centered, and then the width, what I did, it was a bit of a guess, so I kind of started with 80 and I saw that that's kind of too much space for my buttons, so ended up with 100. And then you can see that I have on each of the pages made the images fit, so that spanned 3 columns and 3. There's a nice bit of spacing here which was determined by my grid, and the top spacing is based on the space here. So I know that's 20, so all I did was create a frame, a rectangle that was 20 by 20, and then I used that to help snap my images too, which created the space at the top and the bottom. Okay, so that's all it is, all laid up. So these are all individual frames, and if I open up one of these down the side, you can see that I have named all my images so that I don't get muddled up. Have my carousel background as a rectangle box, and this is my text box. I've created the type to be slightly smaller than the type I used in my website. If I select just this text, it's set to 15. And this one here is 17 and it's bold. Okay, so we're good to start. Okay, so lastly, just to point out, I've also positioned a ruler at the top where I want the box to sit, and I'm also going to drag out 2 to the side. If you can't see your rulers, it is Shift R to turn them on or off, and if you forget that shortcut, you can find it to the side here, and you can see you can just tick rulers. So I'm going to drag out 1 here and here. All right. So now I'm going to delete that because that's just a guide. Okay, so next select all of those carousel elements, and I'm going to drag it into my gallery page, and I'm going to align it to the edge of my columns. I'm also going to place it underneath my indicator dots and my arrows. So now you can see that that is sitting above. Now to trim this here, all I need to do is hold down Control and drag, Before I do that, I have to frame it. So I have to put all of these carousels into their own frame. So I'm going to right click and go to select frame selection and rename the frame Carousel Main. And now with that frame selected, I can now hold Control and drag that inwards, and you can see that the content itself is not squashing. And zoom in until it's at the edge of the image here. Beautiful. Okay, so next I'm going to copy all the elements in my carousel. But before I do that, you can see that the content to the side is still visible. So I just ensure that I clip the content. So select that frame and in the sidebar just select clip content, and now you can see that that's clipped within that frame. So select the carousel main and my buttons and the indicator dots, so I'm just going to place those down, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to frame that. I'm just going to actually drag it out of that gallery page and off to the side, because I'm going to do all my prototyping here, which will just make it a bit easier. So with those all selected, I'm going to create a frame again. So frame selection, and now because I have 8 different images in my carousel, I'm going to duplicate this frame 8 times. So with the frame 1 selected, I just drag it out 8 times. Next, I'm going to drag out rulers, which I'm going to use to align my content to. Okay, so again, in frame 2, select 1 to 8, hold down Shift and drag to the left, and I'm just going to zoom in and check that it is aligned to that ruler here, and do the same for each of the frames. Okay, so next I'm going to change the color of each of my indicator dots. So frame 1 is the first one, 2 I'm going to make the second one the pink, and change the first one back to the white. So I've changed my positioning of each of my images within the frame, and I've also changed the colors of each of my indicator dots so they are active for the appropriate frame. Alright, so now we're ready to create our prototyping. To do that, I'm going to select all of these frames, and I'm going to create this into a component set. So at the top you can see my components button, and I'm going to create component set, and I'm going to rename it carousel component. Next, go to prototype. So if I select my first button on the right and drag it to the second frame, and in the interaction details it's going to be on click change to frame 2, and the animation is going to be Spark Animate, and this is quite a good speed, so I repeat that for all of the buttons on the right. Cool, and then on this one here, this button here won't go any further because we're at the end of our image carousel. So we just select this button, go back to design. We're just going to actually turn off the visibility of that element. And now go back to prototype, and we'll do the same for this left side. And again, we're going to turn off the visibility of this first button. Okay, so now we're ready. So all we need to do is we need to bring in this component into our gallery page and we should be done. So to bring that in, it'll be in your assets panel and you have it here and you can simply drag and drop. And then we've got our rulers which will align for us. So it's going to align to the edge of this ruler here. And now if we preview that, there it is.